Hello everyone, today we are going to explain metaphysical poetry, and we are also going to explain all those things which are related to metaphysical poetry. Well, basically metaphysical poetry is nothing but it was a literary movement started in 17th century in England. Right? And the founder of this movement was John Donne. And the poets who were called metaphysical poets were George Herbert, Andrew Marvell, Richard Crashaw, etc. Right? And these were the poets. They were considered to be metaphysical in nature. But you should also remember that the term metaphysical was used by 18th century writer Samuel Johnson for them, right? In one of his books. And the book name was Lives of the Most Eminent English Poets, right? It was his book. In that book he used the metaphysical poets, right? The question must be in your mind that why he has used metaphysical poets for them. Therefore, he has used the term because the poetry of this group is completely different from their contemporary writers, right, or poets. Basically, metaphysical poetry is different from other forms of poetry in several ways. For example, philosophical themes. This is one of the characteristics of a metaphysical poetry, that it is philosophical than other forms of poetry. Basically, metaphysical poets were known for their interest in searching complex and philosophical themes. They discussed abstract ideas and concepts such as death and mortality, spirituality, nature and reality, etc. Simply, you can say metaphysical poetry is more philosophical than conventional poetry. And the second point is use of wit. It is the second characteristic of metaphysical poetry, because poets belonging to this group tried to show their wit in their poetry, and they were men of learning, right? And everyone belonging to this moment often well educated, and they always search for ways to show their knowledge through their poetry. So that is why their poetry was more philosophical, and they tried to show their wit in the form of poetry. So that is why it is different from conventional poetry. Use of metaphysical conceit. The poets belonging to this movement used conceits in their poetry a lot. But the question is what conceits are. So let me give you the answer so then you will understand it. Conceits are basically literary devices that create an extended metaphor between two dissimilar things. You can say that these poets try to compare two dissimilar things in their poetry. As we look at the poem of John Donne, that is a valediction forbidding mourning. Basically, in this poem, he compared himself and his wife to a compass, right? He says that he is the 1 foot of compass and his wife is the second. If she does not move, so he will also not move. So this is conceit which the metaphysical poets used a lot. Simply you can say that when two things that are quite dissimilar and they are compared, so and like an extended metaphor, so that would be considered conceits, right? The next distinctive feature is intellectualism. It is also the main point of metaphysical poetry, that it is intellectual and complex because it uses wit, paradox and intricate language to convey its themes. Basically, the poets of this movement were often well educated and drew their knowledge from classical literature, philosophy, and science, so therefore their poetry is intellectually challenging and thought provoking. Well, guys, I hope that you have got the idea about metaphysical poetry. But if you have enjoyed this lecture, please do not forget like and subscription to the channel.